Billy Osborne, played the game, scouted, has called games. You've seen it from all angles, man. And yesterday was one of those days. Is it one of those days that you just forget about, or is it one of those days that has some hints to some more problems down the road?
I think I hate to say this, but I think that they were truly, truly exposed in areas that I could see that they were out there. I just did not realize that. We all talked about it, and we even said it that it had the potential to really get out of hand, depending on things that we did. But I thought this was going to be their best effort. I was really surprised at how they came out and played on both sides of the ball.
Oz, you can almost give an excuse a little bit to the secondary. They're playing without their top 5 corners by the second quarter there, but the Saints established a pretty good running game early on, and yet again we're talking about the Eagles linebackers and that first part of your second level just not making plays. Veteran guys.
You know what, Jeff? Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, I've been a kind of defender of the defense. I thought that they've been playing winning football up until that second half of the Cowboys game. You and I talked about it on our podcast and on WIP, our show on Saturday. My feeling was that they needed to do a strategy. Obviously, I think what the old Chichi Rodriguez, the golfer, said that, you got to play the game that you have that day or you're brought to the course that day. Well, you can talk about all these things, the Super Bowl, but the bottom line is what's your team today? How am I lining up? Mm-hmm. So they had some injuries, had some stuff, so you got to figure out a way to win the game with your team that you had. I felt that the best way to get Drew Brees is to make him uncomfortable, get him off his mark, move him around. What you don't want to have a guy do is sit there in a pocket like him and be able to survey the field without any type of, pressure. On top of that, Jeff, we did what I feel is the worst possible choice, and that is give a veteran quarterback no pressure and play man-to-man defense on the outside, especially with corners and safeties that aren't ready to play and play terrible man-to-man technique. That really surprised me.
And we talked about that a lot. Mike, Jim has played cover 2 a decent amount of it once this year against the Giants, right? You're facing Beckham, you're facing Ingram, you're facing all those weapons they had, and it worked. They kicked the Giants' butt, but you would have thought with so many injuries at corner that Jim's going to play 2 deep safeties and try to protect those guys as much as possible. He did not.
No, and
agreed with you.
But here's what we had Spagnuolo on the show last week, and he had mentioned that it's very difficult. And Oz, you could probably talk about this, and maybe you agree or disagree with him. He said it's very difficult when you put a game plan in, and then in the middle of the game you lose a couple of pieces to try to change that game plan based on the personnel. So more times than not, you're going to stick with the game plan that you went into the game with, even if your guys don't finish the game that started the game.
Well, I thought about that too. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, all right, what do we do here? But you're not really asking guys to, do different things in terms of combo coverage. I get what Spagnuolo is saying. I get it. But you can tell the guys, instead of playing man, we're going to play zone. And instead of playing cover 2, we're going to play cover 3. That's not something exotic. That's not saying play halves. That's not saying play halves. That's not saying play Tampa 2. That's not doing anything like that. That's just saying we're just going to switch up our philosophy, but, you do this all the time anyway in practice, so it's not that big of a deal. So I get it. But what I thought, Mike, was that when you're seeing that he is able to pick and choose where he wants to go, and what I think was really, really exposed in this game, and I hate to say it, Mike, but Rasul Douglas is absolutely awful in man-to-man coverage.
Yeah, he's slow.
This guy get beat. He did a good job of kind of heading up, but then every time a receiver comes off the line of scrimmage, he gets his hips turn. He doesn't get any chuck on him off the line of scrimmage. He's constantly in a trail technique, which is fine if he's trailing to the outside, but he always loses to the inside. And when you lose inside against man, you're done. Mm-hmm. But he's not the only one. It seems like consistently the Eagles secondary's technique against man-to-man coverage gets beat every single time, and that's a concern.
Ozzy, I said this a lot this year. I felt like Ronald Darby always looked to me like a guy who excelled and played his best when he's up against wide receivers and using his hands and being physical. He's not a physical tackler, but he seems to be a physical cover corner. And it's weird to me that you can be one but not the other, but whatever. And yet the philosophy when he's been healthy is just like everybody else. He's usually 6, 8, 10 yards away from the ball, and then he has to rely on different instincts. And I feel like that has played to his weakness, and I'm kind of surprised that either Corey Unlin, the D-backs coach, or Jim as the D coordinator have not addressed this because it's been consistent with him and just how they approach defense.
Yeah, and I agree with you because I told you as a wide receiver, the most difficult thing for me was when I had bump coverage underneath and zone help over top. That is a very difficult defense to attack because even if you get off of the line of scrimmage, a lot of times when you get beat at the line of scrimmage for man-to-man, they run these little fade routes or they run deep fade comebacks or deep digs. Well, now you have help over top, you're going to get clobbered. So I thought the best thing against this defense, if you want to do that, that's great, but don't leave your guys on an island. So I thought the best defense against New Orleans was to get 4 or 5 guys, get pressure, bring pressure on him, do bump coverage on the outside, but don't let him exposed. Don't leave the guys wide open out there. Put a man or two over top so you can't get beat over top and really force Drew Brees to have to fit things in, but also move off the pocket. Did he even get hit? I don't even think he got picked off the turf one time.
No.
I don't think there was one time.
No, it was 7-on-7.
Brees, you got to bring pressure.
Right, and we're talking with Billy Osborne here. Defend Your Head, Protect. Check those out, and of course the Inside the Birds podcast that Mosher, Billy Osborne, and Adam Kaplan do together. Ozzie, you look at
Mike. You know how you kind of do your show, and just between you and I feel like when
there's a lot of people listening.
In my show, is there? But I feel like when I do the show, I just wanted to make sure I told you and Josh. I mean, I feel like I'm carrying the show. You know, when I do that podcast, don't tell Mosher and Kaplan that, but I feel like, you know, it's just between you and I just feel like I know how you feel. I know you told me the same way with your stuff, so I kind of finally understand how you're feeling. But it's a great podcast.
It is true. I have to admit, we do the podcast, probably 4 a month, and the 2 that he shows up to, he definitely carries us. So that I can't. Yeah. I got him.
There he goes. He's going to take the shot, but he didn't get buckled. He came right back at me. No, Mike, thank you for that. I have. It is a great podcast, and these guys, Jeff and Adam, I've learned so much. Really, if you're a football fan, or you're an Eagle fan, and just whatever, that podcast. Again, I'm very knowledgeable in football, but every week I look forward to sitting down with Jeff and Adam because I learn each week. So thank you for mentioning that. It is a lot of fun to do.
He's at Ozzie_football on Twitter. He said he's coming after you on Twitter at Ozzie_football. He's going to catch you one of these.
You got a long way to go.
Got a long way to go.
Oh, look at Mike. Look at Mike throwing kerosene on the fire, buddy.
Let me ask you about the Eagle pass rush and why are they not as effective this year with the similar personnel? In fact, Ozzie, many people felt they upgraded the personnel. They brought in Michael Bennett, and that was supposed to be an upgrade over Vinny Curry. They brought in Haloti Ngata. That was supposed to be an upgrade over Bo Allen. So, and they had Derek Barnett, who, of course, is injured. So why is the pass rush seemingly non-existent right now?
Mike, I knew you were going to ask me that, and I was up till 3:00 in the morning watching this game again and writing all these notes down. And when we get to the offense, I have something similar to that. But the 2 things I would say is, number one is I think that they are gotten back to this where they're just line up, and the offensive line is able. If you watch Drew Brees last night, he did a lot of kill, and he picked out who the guy was that they were concerned about. Mm-hmm. I think that they did a lot of pre-snap giving of their hands, almost like playing poker with your cards up. And I think that just plays into the quarterback and the offensive line. So their twist and their stunts were exposed. They didn't ever seem to get there. And sometimes, Mike, you have to line up with 4 and then maybe bring the corner or bring the linebacker and push out, a defensive lineman. And at times, sometimes you got to bring 5 or 6. And I think that coach just does not want to do that. And it's almost like you pick your poison. When I was watching the scheme and they had all the gaps contained, but that last gap needed to be a corner to fit in there, to me, I thought, wow, that's a really difficult scheme to make successful time and time again when you're asking your corner or safety to come up from the outside and fit in there on that D gap. And if you saw a lot of times with the running backs, when they ran that cutback, they just were not in the D gap and they were off into the second level.
Yep.
A couple times what they did too, Mike, and here's what you do. I think what these teams are doing, they realize these guys are great pass rushers. So what can you do against great pass rushers? Well,
misdirection.
You do exactly counters, screens, draws, different things to hold them up. That one trap that they ran, that inside trap zone run that they ran, it was like a jailbreak. Everybody got in. You're like, oh my gosh, here we go. We're going to sack Drew Brees. The next thing you know, the running back went right past everybody. That was because they trapped them. That was a tremendous call. That running play that they scored with a touchdown on, when the guy went in untouched to the right side, when Ingram went into the right side, if you saw it, they faked the jet sweep, and then they faked the opposite side. They pulled the guard. Everybody in the secondary and the linebackers all went with the jet sweep. And next thing you know, Ingram just bounced it to the right and went in untouched. That was a tremendous scheme. So I think, Mike, answer your question, I think the guys are, it's like when you do something one time, the National Football League is a copycat league. They'll figure you out. You better keep coming to the table with something new. And I just think the coach's scheme does not bring extra players, and I think we need that, and we haven't done it. So they're trying to get home with 4, and they just aren't having success.
Yeah, we were talking earlier that this team might not be right offensively, Ozzie, until they get a 3-down running back who they can put on the field 80% of the time and run an offense where it's not specifically tailored to a certain guy and therefore limited to a specific package of plays at a time. They can go back to being more creative. I think Doug's creativity has been hampered by his lack of confidence in his running game.
Well, I think you're right. And if you go back, and what I did yesterday in my second time through the film, as you and I talked about on our podcast, I know third down was really important, but in my opinion, first down was critical because it allowed us to do our playbook on second and third down. And if you can, get in third in short situations, you're going to have a lot more success. And also, you then don't tell the team that you're just going to run the ball or throw the ball. If you remember that one series, I almost fell off my couch. They actually ran the ball on first down, and they got like 4 or 5 yards. And then on second down, they ran it again and got a first down. I almost completely died. I think they ran the ball 3 straight times, and they got 5 or 6 yards each time. The one time I can point out is that they went shotgun, and they went and they had a sidecar to the right, and they ran a little left side zone run, and they got 3 yards. And my point of that was it was just stationary. For whatever reason, when you go back and look at it, we do not motion, we do not shift, and we do not exchange. And what I mean by that is a lot of times you'll go up to the line of scrimmage and you'll have your tight end and your up back to the right. When you say a signal, everybody shifts and it does something else. And then you bring in motion. The touchdown that the Saints scored, they shifted, they got set, they motioned, and then they went with the ball. They shift or motion almost every single play, and that's not a waste of time. That is to see what the defense is doing, to know if they're zone, man, who's covering who's blitzing. That's why you shift. That's why you play. That's why you do those things in motion. We don't do it. It was like I was watching a 6th grade offense. Because a lot of times when you're in 6th grade, you don't shift and you don't motion because the guys don't understand the scheme. They don't understand the wording in the huddle. I was surprised and shocked at the lack of not just ingenuity in the play call and the different things that they did, but even in the pre-snap to get the read, we weren't doing things that most good offenses do.
So what is personnel-wise? Are there issues on? I mean, is it more scheme and play call? Do they have? Because we were looking at the offensive personnel. Is there a guy that glares that needs to be replaced or upgraded on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I wrote a couple things down because it's not just all about coaches or play calling, and I believe that's a big deal. You look at let's face it, there were some pretty interesting play calls on the other side. I mean, that's a guy who has some ingenuity down there, and Peyton. And of course, when things are going well, you always point out the positive. Oh, it's great. And when things are going bad, it's always the coaches and the scheme. That's not necessarily the case. But you're right. There is some situations where it's a little bit more than coaching. I felt that Carson, the last couple games, his accuracy was coming, it was starting to bubble up. And I was taking a longer look at it, and, he underthrew a bunch of players. And he also, let's face it, he's a great player, and he's thrown for over 300 yards. But there were some things that were going on, and I don't know if that has to do with his knee. But the one play, he went play action, he rolled out. He didn't have a guy within 15 yards of Matthews, and Matthews had to make like a tremendous catch just to catch it because Carson almost overthrew him. And I saw that time and time again, even on screens. You don't think it's important, but if you don't hit the guy running in his upfield shoulder, he's got to stop, and that really gives the advantage to the defense. So I think Carson's throwing ability yesterday and the game before was something that exposed. The other thing that I saw was our wide receivers. I think that we've upgraded there a little bit, but we need to get a little bit better in our route running to give some open areas to throw the football. If you watch the one time when Matthews ran the dig route, he ran an inside breaking route, and he asked for a flag because the defender kind of pulled his shirt. But watch what he does at the top of his route. He just rounds it. If you watch like a Cooper or you watch Golden Tate, at the top of their route, they're exploding, they're shifting, they're coming out of it. He just rounded his route. So in the National Football League, guys are just going to close on that because they're not threatened to go deep or another way. So I think our wide receivers need to pick up their game from a running perspective. And, I know our offensive line's been bagged up, but we talked about the running ability, but it's tough for me to criticize them because I don't think I've seen enough carries for any of those guys to say that they're lacking something. I mean, I know somebody said they should have break tackles and things like that, but, I don't know. We just haven't seen enough of it. I was curious to get your take. What's the feedback been from your side from the offensive, from some of the offensive players?
There's not a single player that you would bench right now for poor performance, to Mike's point. There's just no backup that I think is on the team that's going to go in there and make a better, be a better player. So it's really on the coaches right now with the personnel,
right,
to figure it out. I agree. Jordan Matthews has never been a very good route runner. He's always been kind of a big physical guy, matched up against nickels and safeties and slower linebackers. It's never been his thing. I think they're having a tough time figuring out how to get Golden Tate and Nelson Aguilar on the field and have them both be productive.
I think you're exactly right. And don't you love Matthews? He's got some passion. He's got some fire. I mean, I love the way he's out there and he'll do whatever you want him to do, and he'll run around. So that's up to you as the coach to put him in positions. All right, you don't need him to run a deep comeback or a deep post corner when you got to really turn the corner around. But you're right, in space.
Well, the way they were defending Ertz yesterday, they were determined not to let Ertz beat them.
Yeah,
you would think that there were opportunities for receivers to make some plays, which didn't happen.
That's a great point. That was probably the first time that we saw pretty distinctly a team out there trying to take away a player. And they had, which I thought was interesting, they would jam them at the line of scrimmage, and then they would also bring a linebacker, and then they always had help over top. And they were really forcing Carson to go other ways. And you're right. That's the thing that surprised me the most. And I think the one area where you can look at, Mike and Jeff, and if you remember the play, we went play action, and they had, I believe it was Aguilar on the outside. And he was running a deep cross go route. And they had him in man-to-man coverage, and right up the line of scrimmage, he beat his bump coverage. And the safety came up, and he jumped the tight end on the play action. So they jumped him. They jumped. They said, "Let's go. We're not going to let you throw to the wide receiver." So they disguised it, and they jumped Ertz as soon as the ball was snapped, and they went play action. What they did not see is the backside corner, who was 6 yards off the line of scrimmage, waiting for number two, whoever number two would be, number two receiver, to release into the flat or go up the sideline to cover him. Well, as soon as they saw that number two wasn't there, he said, you know what? Out of this look on the front side, this is what they run. He ran straight back to the middle of the field, and Carson never saw him. And when he threw that ball, it was an easy interception, if you remember that play. He never saw the backside corner. And again, that was a design play that they never knew, or they never believed that the corner from the backside would get back there. So they needed to hold somebody there, and they didn't do it.
There was a lot of telling things. I don't know if you saw. We're talking with Billy Osborne, by the way. Check him out on Twitter at Ozzy_football. Defend your head. Pro Tech is this time with all of the concussions in football. Those guys are trying to put together a better helmet. Inside the Birds podcast, and there's so much that we can continue to dissect here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. We're running out of time. Real quick, did you see, though, the article from Peter King that basically Sean Payton, they let him inside at their game plan, and they said they want to go at 22. They don't think he tackles very well, and if you run at him, then he doesn't defend very well. He's talking about Sidney Jones as the guy. That was their game plan, to go after 22 on defense. And then on offense, they basically said, we want Wentz to try to beat us. They didn't think Wentz could beat them because they basically said in the game plan that they know the Eagles aren't running the ball, that this team will not run the ball, so let's let them throw the ball and see what happens. So I thought that was two pretty telling things in that piece by Peter King.
That's very, very telling, and it's interesting because sometimes we say to ourselves, oh, well, we're not the coaches and we're not in the meeting rooms, but then when you see things like your own eyes, you're saying to yourself, this has to be right. I mean, why aren't they doing this? And, you don't want to. I'm not a really big fan of constantly criticizing an organization or a coaching style because they're out there all the time. Even with Coach Schwartz, I thought, my feeling was go after Drew Brees. Do not let him sit there comfortable in the pocket. I don't care what you need to do, but he's going to kill you if you do that. Then I thought to myself, well, they must have done something and said rushing 3, dropping 8 would be better. And I thought, okay, then he must know what they're doing. And then they kept going, man, and next thing you know, they're down 3 or 4 scores. And I'm thinking, they better hurry up and get some pressure so we get some turnovers. And it never happened. But, Michael, you're exactly right. It seems like teams are figuring out the Eagles. Yeah. And we've been seeing this now for 3 or 4 weeks. And I know that, Jeff, I've said it before, reluctantly I'm saying they're very predictable offensively. And defensively, I thought that they were predictable. He seemed to get away from that or kind of address that. And now it seems like it's going back to that. In the National Football League, every week is a different week. You got to bring different things to your offensive and defensive game plans.
All right, Oz, we look forward to another breakdown observation next Monday right here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Eagles. Oh, sounds like you got to go. All right, pal.
Yeah, that's the other station that's calling me.
All right, man.
Hey, one thing I want to say is, I appreciate it. And just so you know, the Atlantic City Press and the Leader are actually doing some stories on the Pro Tech in Wildwood, so look for that too.
All right, cool. Nice. Yeah, we'll definitely make mention and talk about that some more on next week's Observations with Billy Osborne here on the Sports Bash.